Hi, and welcome to the Naturalists podcast. I'm C. McKeon.
I'm Anthony Porter.
And I'm Lev Frid.
And we are going to be discussing what is going on in the natural world outside of your front door and around the globe. Thank you for joining us once again for the Naturalist podcast. I am back with Lev. Hi, Lev.
Hello. Long time no see.
And Anthony. Hi, Anthony.
Hey, Steve. It's good to see you again. What's up, Lev? It's been a while.
Yeah. Good to be back. Good to be back on the air.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so troubled times all around, but the natural world keeps spinning. So we've got a chance to talk about it. So what's going on outside your front door? Why don't we start with you, Anthony? Where are you?
All right. Well, last time I checked into the podcast, I was in Colorado in Grand Junction. And since then, I've moved out and I'm in Big Bear Lake, California. And behind me, you can see some of the leaves changing, or those that are listening, the leaves are getting to be a nice crispness where you can walk, and everything is super noisy, but it's getting to be a goldenish brown all around me. So it's really neat. I saw a bunch of beautiful downy woodpeckers on the way walking over here, and it's tapering down as the heat wave is increasing. So right now it's beautiful. I am very much looking forward to getting wet soon.
Now, you've been dealing with a lot of fires out your way, right?
Yes. Gosh, California from August to September. I had a friend that came out to visit, and she left within a week. She's like, you know what? I'm not staying here. This is ridiculous.
Wow.
It was, you'd look up and it'd be high noon, but the sun would be like deep orange.
Wow.
And you'd wake up and it would just be kind of raining ash. I'd have like an inch covering my car of ash in the morning. So that was rough.
That's wild.
Yeah. And I mean, I would have like these leaves like, oh, that's an oak leaf on the ground, and I'm in Chaparral area. So I know this is a thing that's traveled for a while. So, I mean, it's just been bad. Luckily, the heat wave and the fires didn't coincide too intensely. The heat wave is kind of starting now, and right towards the end, picking up towards winter. It's a really uncomfortably warm right now, but if we're looking around outside, it's hazy. It's not smoky, but it's a little hazy. I see nothing but brightness in the future.
Nice.
Good.
We can hope.
That's easy enough. Yeah.
Normally, California has a dry summer, right? And then the fall is the wet season. Is that correct, Anthony?
Yes, but from the time that I've been a kid to now, it's been super all over the place. It's been pretty hard to track. I would say the springtime, yeah, spring showers, summer intermittent, but I think actually during the fall we get the least amount.
There's a kettle of raptors on your video, I think, directly behind you, Anthony. I don't know. There's just saw 3 birds of prey that just soared by. Oh,
yeah. Those are big old crows up there.
Oh, crows. All right.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it
so
just
cool.
looked like they were soaring. Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty neat up here. I'm really excited. It's been a while since I've been up here. This is a second home for me. I know these woods like the back of my hand. If you drop me here with a blindfold, I'm on my way anywhere. It's pretty neat.
Oh, well, take us for a walk.
Heck yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So around here, it's a pretty mixed con area, and there's a mixture of Jeffrey pine, ponderosa pine, and for those of you that are in the system, you know that you're there because it smells like vanilla and butterscotch everywhere. So typically what they say is the ponderosa trees are the ones that smell like butterscotch, and then the Jeffrey pines are the ones that smell more like vanilla. But they hybridize so much in this area. It just honestly, like, you can walk through the forest and it smells like a kitchen. It's really neat. So yeah, we got black oak around me. At this time of year, all the squirrels have completely scavenged all of the acorns already. But it's a really neat area. I like to take jogs in this area because the animals are pretty used to people. But if you take jogs, you get to run into like 3 or 4 coyotes sometimes, and they just kind of stare at you like, with the giant eyes, and then they take off. But every time that I see the coyotes, it's pretty neat to I just forget how big their tails are. Like, you're used to dogs so much, but foxes and coyotes, I'm always struck by their tails, which is really neat.
Extra fluff.
Yeah, the extra fluff. And then, like I was saying earlier, downy woodpeckers. For those of you that are watching, behind me is a dairy, and it's just riddled with downy woodpecker holes going all the way up to the top. But yeah, there's not incredibly large amounts of animals out here, but everything's on a small level. Actually, last time I was here, in my garage, my brother found a little dying wood mouse, a little tiny baby, and they're native to the area, so they felt nice and they decided to like keep it, and it's still alive, like in a little gerbil center in their room, which is pretty neat. So they have like a native wood mouse that wasn't raised by anybody, just hanging out in their room with a cat. But yeah, it's just like a golden. It's nice because the haze is actually complementing the goldenness right now. But yeah, it's starting to get. I'll probably have about 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours of good light before I gotta head somewhere safer. But yeah, right now it's just a perfect time of the year to hang out here. The only one thing that I really look out for is the wild burros, the wild donkeys out here. They have packs of like 40 that have kind of walked around this area. They say that the gold miners that came out here before just ditched them at one point. So we see them every once in a while. I see like hoof marks, but they're not horse. They're smaller than horses.
Hmm.
So every time I look around, I kind of look for their tracks. And right now there's too many leaves on the ground to kind of do some tracking. But yeah, it's really neat to just see like 4 or 5 burrows in the middle of the woods. You know, it's something that's really unique.
So I'm curious, you mentioned that the different pines smell differently. What do you smell right now?
Yeah, well, that's what I've been told. I can't. Oh man, I'm actually in like a ring of oak, so I'm not super good on the vanilla or butterscotch. But oak has a very specific smell, and then we have ironwood trees here, and those smell pretty good too. I can show a picture for those of you that are watching, but they have very tiny leaves, and they are called ironwoods because they are super hard to get out of the ground if you're trying to do any kind of land management. Their root systems are ridiculously deep. So yeah, right now it's just like, to me, it just smells like oak. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you for the tour. It seems like a nice area.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. Yep. Well, you got to visit, see, and we'll go on adventures.
I would like that.
Yeah, it looks great. I'm looking. It's like, oh, there's leaves. You know, there's still leaves.
Yeah, it's getting there.
It's awesome.
How are things up by you, Lev?
They're well. Yeah, they're it's going well. We're sort of in the latter part of autumn right now. It's a bit of a warm spell that we've been experiencing this week. So sort of last week we had some typical kind of first frosty things, you know, it got below freezing. But this week it's been really hot. So there's not been much change. We had a big sort of wind event over the weekend, so that knocked a lot of leaves down. It was really nice just last week, like the maples and excuse me, and the beeches and stuff were sort of at the peak of their colors, but now most of those are they've lost their leaves. So we have this sort of golden encore, we call it, and it's the sort of the poplars, and if you go further north, the larches or the tamaracks, they're turning now, and it's like this really nice yellow color. So that's what we've been enjoying here. I've been on lockdown since March, more or less. So I haven't been going out too much. I've been lucky enough that here in Ontario that they've given us sort of they've sort of let us off the leash a little bit and allowed us to go around a little bit more than earlier at the start of the pandemic. So I've visited some areas. I've gone to Algonquin Park further north, but most of the time I've spent concentrated in this it's a conservation area called the Courtright Center. It's a small area. It's like 400 hectares or something, and it's close to my house here. I moved, if you don't remember from the earlier podcast, from further north to to here, close to Toronto, the big city. So that's been a little bit hard for me just because I'm not a huge city person. But I've actually found that the birding here, especially during the migration, has been really good, especially this year. There's been a lot of budworm in Quebec. Huge budworm outbreak, and it's been happening for years, but I think it's getting close to the peak. The government's kind of floating around this idea of spraying, and that usually when they do that, it's really bad. It's really damaging. Well, bad
Right.
for timber barons, but not everything else. Because the birds have been incredible. Like the numbers of birds, and it's everything, like warblers, even like sharp-shinned hawks. One of the stations, Tadoussac, just had the most they've had since 1994 pass through. I think it was 2 days ago, and all kinds of stuff have really been benefiting from it. So there's a lot of great birds have been passing through. So
What
it's been good. It's eye-opening.
what is the tree that the budworm goes after?
So they eat spruce, but they also eat balsam fir. So in Quebec, they're eating black spruce, white spruce, and balsam fir. That's I think the ones that are most affected. And they're pulp trees. And of course, Canada is a natural resource-based economy, and we've yet to see what'll happen. They haven't sprayed this year, but they're talking about maybe doing it next year. There's a lot of people, including myself, that are gearing up for a fight against this, because it's really evening grosbeak, I think, is really a poster child for this, because a lot of folks who've been birding for a long time note that in the 60s, like there's been a lot of evening grosbeaks, and since then their numbers have just tanked. Over the past several years, well, I shouldn't say several, like 5 or 6 years maybe, they've been increasing. And we're seeing a big flight this year, sort of the biggest that we've seen for a long time. And it's been relatively recently discovered that it is a budworm specialist. So it's like Cape May warbler, Tennessee warbler, and bay-breasted warbler, which benefit from budworms. Populations explode when there's a budworm outbreak. Even because has done the same. And anecdotally, for now, and there's some empirical evidence that's coming out too, a lot of other species have benefited from it as well, which makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so we'll see. Any case, at least at this point, there's a lot to see, and I know a lot of birders, including myself, in the east and the eastern seaboard, have been seeing a lot more than usual. So yeah, pretty exciting.
Very cool.
Absolutely. A lot of hope in there, huh?
Yeah.
It's cool.
So I'm still in Florida, in Central Florida, and we're starting to get the idea that fall might be happening. It's still like in the high 80s during the day, with a little bit of a dip at night. So maybe it gets into the 70s at night. So that's fall, right? And all of your migrants are just kind of reaching us now. Lots of warblers coming down from the north. The big peregrine passage, the peregrine falcon passage, just happened in the Florida Keys. So that's exciting. But it still feels very summery. So lots of herp activity. The rains, unlike California and Anthony's situation, the rains are starting to taper here. So we're going from our wet summer season into our drier fall winter season. But good times all around.
Very nice.
Yeah, well, there's a lot coming. Yeah, I think there's a lot coming your way, judging by what we've seen here. So,
if evening grosbeaks are on the list, I'm excited. That's a beautiful bird.
Evening grosbeak. I know Marky Muchler, who's a very prominent young birder. So she, I think, I'm not sure if it's her or if it's somebody she knows. So she's had them, I think, in Baton Rouge.
Wow.
Evening grosbeak. So already, so they're coming. And even here, we don't usually feel them until later this month. And we've had like huge passage. Like I think over the course of this week in Rimouski, which is in northeastern Quebec along the river there, the St. Lawrence, they're like 800 pass through, which is really big. So exciting, and hopefully a Florida record coming. I think it's not. I think it'll it'll happen. I think it'll happen.
That would be exciting.
I'm hoping. Fingers crossed.
Well, there have been a few other really cool migration stories in the news of late, right? So maybe
Yeah, there've been several. Yeah, one that I've noticed, actually, I think it was just today or maybe yesterday, was this great blue heron that conducted this fascinating and very bizarre, at least to me, flight. It was in Quebec, was it? I don't remember where it was banded.
I think it was banded in Maine. I could be
Oh, in
mistaken.
Maine. Yes, that's right. Yeah, in Maine. Or maybe Vermont. Anyway, it doesn't matter. In the Northeast. And so this great blue heron, and for me, it's, you see a great blue heron and you think like, well, can't possibly do like a massive migration, because you see them here. We see them well into December, and sometimes we have winter records and stuff like that. But this thing flew like 600 kilometers offshore and was flying over open water for several days towards Bermuda. And it actually almost made it to Bermuda, but then it just decided to turn around and headed for the Everglades. And I think, it made there, and they're waiting to see if it goes back to its traditional area in Cuba where it wintered. So fascinating stuff for great blue herons.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Once or twice I've seen them offshore, and it's always strange because a bird of that size and kind of slow wing beat.
Yeah.
First it registers like pterodactyl, and then you're like, oh no, it's a pelican. And then it finally will dawn on you, oh, wait, I'm actually seeing a large group of great blue herons well offshore. It's a little strange, as you say.
Yeah. And sometimes you see them like very high in the sky as well, right? Like I've seen them in Algarve in the spring, where it's like dots in the sky and you think they're cranes or bald eagles or something. And it's great blue herons. So I'd love to sort of try and find out like at what altitude it was traveling when it was sort of over the sea, like whether it was like pretty high or pretty low over the water, or I've seen them offshore a couple of times, I think, too, off of Hats, and they were quite low, I think, when I saw them. But
when Anthony and I were going around the world on that ship a couple years back, we had a number of herons show up on the ship, right?
Oh, cool.
That's funny that you mentioned on the ship, because I don't know if you remember this, but maybe 6 months after that, I saw this amazingly huge bird, and I was waiting on a ship in Vancouver trying to get to one of the islands in British Columbia. And I saw this giant, like you said, it looked like a hairy pterodactyl, or like a furry pterodactyl. And I was like, oh my God, C would love this. I would love to take a picture. And I sent it to him like, this is a crazy bird. Like, what is this? And you're like, that's a great blue heron. I'm like, oh my gosh, really? And I look it up, and it's like most common heron in North America. I was like, oh, well, that's still cool to me. But the first time I ever heard of one was, you told me about it, see?
Totally cool bird, as it turns out, and more frequently seen at sea than we had ever thought. So
awesome.
And so the great blue heron did its voyage, and then there's another story that just popped up too. The godwit, right?
Yes. Yeah. Bar-tailed godwit. Yeah, and that went from Alaska to New Zealand in one go.
Whoa.
It took like 12 days or something like that, and it was something like 12,000 kilometers. I'm not sure how much that is in miles. 7,000 something. A lot. Yeah, amazing too. And it's one of these things where it's like birds are just incredible, and you think like, these two fairly big birds have done these amazing passages, but even small birds that you see on a daily stroll through the woods, like warblers and sparrows, they're conducting kinglets, they're conducting like similar passages as well, and perhaps even more incredible because of their small body size. So yeah, it's amazing. And it actually is it's quite we're all in lockdown, and all these horrible things are happening all around us, but it's sort of reassuring that birds are still doing what they were made to do or what they had evolved to do. So, and yeah, things are going on schedule. So it's nice. It's reassuring to see.
Anthony, I know you're not a bird guy. By nature, you are an animal guy.
I'd like to be a bird, but I'm not a bird guy. Yeah.
So, any cool mammal stories other than
Oh
your
man.
wild burrows?
Within my trekkings, I just actually got back from Flagstaff, Arizona. I was over there for a friend's birthday, but it turns out her therapy cat ended up getting hit by a car on her birthday. It was a terrible thing.
Oh, that is
but
terrible. Yeah.
Yeah, we it was a bad thing. It ended up, I was like, you know what, like, I'm here, I'm gonna support, and then I'm also gonna try to adopt like an animal. I was going to all these shelters. I visited like 2 shelters a day, finding cool animals and stuff. But at the same time, I was hiking around these areas, and if you talk about like changing leaves, like the aspen leaves were changing over there. Lev, do you have like aspens and stuff up there as well?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we have big tooth and trembling. We have balsam poplar and birches and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely.
Are you part of the Canadian Shield, that like climate area?
So where I am right now, it's just south of the Canadian Shield. So we're on the limestone plain. But if you go maybe 130 or 40 kilometers, so not very far, you start to hit that shield. Yeah.
Okay, understood. Well, yeah, it's just been amazing to see that changing weather. And last time I was in this area, when I was backpacking in the area, I texted UC because I saw like 2 gleaming eyes when I was backpacking alone, and I was just kind of sitting by the fire before fires were like the bane of California. But I was just having a fire by myself, reading a book, and I had my hammock set up backpacking. Underneath my hammock between 2 trees, about 15 yards off to my right. I don't know which one. There was a 2 reflecting eyes that were going back at me, and they were like 4 or 5 inches apart. So it was something large, or 2 small one-eyed animals.
Right.
So I was really curious, and I saw them, and they were like a yellowish green kind of reflection. And I was like, I don't know what that is. I really see a silhouette of it, and it was like a hulking thing for sure. It was large, and I know there's black bears in the area, but I was curious about it. And anyways, I got up close to it, and it just looked like a very fat cat sitting on the ground, like laying under like a sunbeam on the ground. But it was the middle of the night, and I was like, oh, I'm right next to a mountain lion. This is a mountain lion just hanging out with me. And so I texted C after I decided to pack myself up and get the heck out of there. I'm like, this is really awesome. I ended up sitting back down and reading next to like this mountain lion that was next to me for like 25 feet. I was throwing rocks, throwing sticks, trying my best to get it disturbed, but it didn't move. And so I'm like, this guy's habituated. I'm gonna be the one to back down. So I started singing rock songs at the top of my lungs, walking backwards all the way back like 2 miles out of there. And I got back to the top of the area where I texted C, and I was like, hey, something was looking at me, reflecting back with like this yellowish, greenish like reflection in their eyes. And I remember him telling me that you can actually determine the animal based off the color of the reflection of the eyes. And do you remember? Yeah, so C is like, pretty sure that was a mountain lion. And I was like, oh, that's all right. Well, I was camping. I would be safe. I was in my hammock, and C was like, they're not afraid of hammocks, man. Like, get a tent.
Oh, wow.
And since then, I have not slept in a hammock. It's been about 2 years, but I haven't.
That makes me sad.
I mean,
you done, C?
It's probably saved my lumbar support quite a bit, but yeah, that's my one big mountain lion story. This area.
That is an epic mountain lion story.
Yeah, very passive. Yeah.
Speaking of mountain lions, there have been a video recently that has been circulating.
I saw that.
Yeah. I think we had it on our national news last night here. Quite stark. Originally, I guess the sort of thought behind it was that this thing was trying to eat this guy, and a lot of people were all like, mountain lions, but it sort of came out later, and you can actually see in the video that it was he was approaching the cubs, which probably was not maybe the
not smart
thing to do. I mean, it was, if I saw some mountain lion cubs like playing on the side of the road, like it would be pretty tempting to like get a better look or maybe a photograph, but also, you know, kind of massive carnivore, potentially very dangerous. Yeah.
I will
I'm
also
glad the
point
guy
out
didn't get. I'm glad the guy didn't get hurt, and it was actually it was quite an educational, I think, video.
It was.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely, yeah. If you see a if you see a little cub of any kind, just walk away.
Yeah.
But
Cub.
yeah, there were
Yeah.
2 cubs, right?
I
There
think
were 2
so.
cubs.
Yeah, I think so, or something.
And he was getting a video of it going closer, and then around the
And then
corner
suddenly,
where
yeah,
the road
this
turns,
thing.
walks out this
It,
mama.
that is wild. Yeah, and it's cool to see it like stomping the ground and yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I
Yeah,
do want to
massive
point
pop.
out that, Lev, when you are out and about, you generally tend to be carrying a big lens. So your photography
Oh
or
yeah, I mean,
kittens would be from about 3 times as far away as this guy got with his cell phone or whatever that was.
yeah. To be honest, see, I think if I saw a mountain lion kitten, I think I may have not even considered the lens at that point. I think I would have turned around and went back very quickly. But yeah, they are cute. Yeah, they're very cute. So you could kind of tell, you could see where the guy was coming from. But I think he learned. I think
When
how to
I
behave
used to
on
work-
large carnivores. Yeah.
when I used to work in Peru, I had one night out looking for frogs along a trail in Amazonian Peru. And I just happened to look up across the creek, and there were 2 very distinctive pairs of eyes staring back at me from about 12 feet away, like not far. There was the physical gap of the creek, but it was 2 mountain lions just sitting right there. Like as I'm puttering along in the dark looking for frogs, you know, head down, kind of
Yeah.
only light available in the headlamp. And I look up and they're right there, absolutely unbothered, not moving. Yeah, definitely. They can be intimidating when they want to be. And
Definitely.
I was appreciative in that video, or at least in the news. People were quick to say, no, this cat was not stalking that man. This was a get out of the face of my kittens.
Yeah, that was good that the media caught on to that. So
yeah,
Absolutely. I've told that story, the mountain lion story, where I met it. I mean, dozens of times to kids, and I always kind of say at the very end, like, the goal of this story is to show you that it's not like every bit of nature is not out to get you. This isn't After Earth with Will Smith. Like everything hasn't evolved to destroy man, you know?
right.
If you want to get along with it, like be safe about it, of course. Make sure you do your due diligence, but things aren't out to get you. Like when you step a foot into nature, you're not like stepping into the Hunger Games.
I like that. That's a very good interpretation.
Dave Shaw, one of our previous guests on the podcast, does tons of work up in Alaska, particularly with the bears as they're feeding on salmon. And so he runs photography workshops with these massive predators. And he is very, very confident, not in well, he's confident enough to get out into the wild with these large predators, but he's also confident in the behavior of the bears, in that they are not interested in messing with him given appropriate distance and behavior on his part, right? And I think I think he's always been a good role model as far as, all right, give them the space they need and we can exist just fine.
Very true.
Absolutely.
So, what else is going on?
Oh man.
Wow.
What else indeed? Well, I can actually mention right now. So I'm in Big Bear City, and it's kind of like a giant bowl where we have a lot of pine trees and just a long rim on top of this mountain range, and then it gets pretty junipine to deserty to chaparral underneath. But while we're sitting I'm at about 7,000 feet right now. It's secluded from stuff, but it's close enough to Los Angeles to where when crazy stuff happens in the main cities, people look to the mountains to get the heck away. So at first it started when COVID first happened. No one wanted to travel anywhere, and this city said, "Hey, we're at ICU. We can't handle all these people coming in." So tourism shut down. The city basically kind of shut down, and I was thinking to myself, like, that's wonderful for these areas, right? Um, at the same time, a lot of ecotourism. This is a huge tourist attraction of a city that ruins maintenance, that ruins the budgeting for the city and what the city has to make sure they take care of the forests. So everything's a double-edged sword. After COVID really hit its quarantine period, the riots started happening. People wanted to get up here. You couldn't get a cabin up here double or booked months in advance.
Wow.
It was just totally like solid booked mayhem. So then I'm like, there's people everywhere. The animals they don't even stand a chance, right? That being said, people from LA aren't looking to do a 2-day backpacking trip to get to where I usually go to interact with animals. So then that happened, and then the fires happened, and then this entire place. So this entire city, this landscape, this ecology has just been like, I feel so bad for the consistency of this ecosystem, but I come up and I realize that in our terms of view, like the news and all this crazy stuff that's happening, I come up here and like nothing really changes. Of course, I don't see the everyday animal lifestyle, but when you look up here, it's just the great perspective changer to see how much chaos is in our lives versus it doesn't really exist out here.
Yeah, very true. It's interesting that you mentioned that, Anthony, because here we had the same thing. At the beginning of the pandemic, I was living close to Algonquin Park. And so starting when things were starting to get shut down in Toronto and other places, like people were going into the parks. So we Ontario Parks closed parks for about 2 months or so. But then when they opened them up, it was mayhem. Like they had never seen such numbers before. It was the biggest numbers they've ever had. And it was like a steady burn. Because usually we have, like the week they're busy, or like in the fall colors, it's busy. But we had like huge, and we had people into the interior, like going canoeing to campsites in the interior, which have never been into the interior before. So again, a double-edged sword. There's a lot of people, I would assume, did that for the first time and said, hey, this is pretty cool. You're getting away from the crowds, and, you're getting a little bit closer to nature than just driving on the road. But there have been more accidents as well. And unfortunately, a few fatalities as well from people who just don't know. It could be just a nice, beautiful, sunny day one day. And then when you have to go back and you have to canoe, even if it's just a couple of kilometers and it's a big windy lake, it could be. Hypothermia can set in quickly, even in the summer, because we do have cold lakes. Like I think the warmest we have is usually late August, September. And it's still, I don't know, like 20-degree water at most. So yeah, interesting how people like looked to nature as an escape. And except the crowding, I guess, it's kind of nice to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, you mentioned that like volatility of the weather. When first time we actually talked, I was in Minnesota, and I remember it was the middle of the summer, and it was just gorgeous and at like 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock. And then as soon as 9 o'clock hit, this thunderstorm came, and it looked like nighttime. The clouds were the thickest I've ever seen it. It was hailing sideways. And by 10:30, it was like nothing ever happened. And yeah, for people that are unaware of what's going on, that would look like pure chaos. Yeah. Have it. Yeah.
Definitely.
Excellent. You're right. It's nice to have a breather. Get out when you can, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Come on up to California. Well, not everybody. I think people are
not everybody. California. Yeah, it's actually, speaking of coming up and going, there have been these eared quetzals that have shown up in Arizona. So this is an amazing. For me, it's the bird that I think I've most wanted to see in my life for many, many years, basically since I'm a birder. So I met my partner. She was studying these things when I met her, and it's like this really important bird for me. And of course, for many, many years, they've been difficult to see. I've tried several times trying to get into Mexico where they are.
Let me pause you.
Yes.
So tell us describe an eared quetzal.
Yes, eared quetzal. So it's like a trogon. So if you're not familiar with trogons, they are actually my cup that I've been sipping juice out of has trogons there. So they're kind of pigeon sized, maybe a little bit larger, slow moving birds that eat mostly fruit and sometimes insects and lizards and things like that. So this eared quetzal, it's not really closely related to the resplendent quetzal that a lot of folks might be familiar with from southern Mexico and Central America with like the big long this thing doesn't have a long tail, it just has a regular sized tail, and it's basically an endemic to Mexico. And sometimes it ventures into the USA. The places where it lives in Mexico are not the safest places. There are places where you can go and see them with relative safety, but overall it's kind of in a tremulous part of the country. So I've tried going. I've failed on multiple occasions to get to where they are. And then COVID hits, and of course, there's these quetzals that appear in Arizona, and they've been there for months, and they're still there. And
Wow.
I could go because you're allowed to fly, but just responsibility tells me otherwise. I'm living in a house with a 90-year-old a woman, so I really don't want to take any risks, and airports really make me anxious, especially during this sort of pandemic. So I've held back from the quetzals, but it's been a little bit painful for me to see these amazing pictures and stuff like that of these rare birds coming up and me not being able to see them.
I've been doing the
talking
same
about
thing.
Yeah,
I've been
you
also waiting. So when you decide, Lev, that it's safe, you let me know. I will meet you in Arizona, and we will go find Quetzal.
Yes.
You kidding me? I'll go too.
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna drive.
we should all do it. Yeah, we should all do it. I was actually and another even more like salt in the wounds, right? Like I had a tour actually, a rock jumper tour that I was going to lead in upstate New York in October, at the beginning of October. And of course, we confirmed the tour something like in May or June, and we thought it was going to be okay, but no, that was around the time that the second wave hit, and thankfully we got somebody else who was able to do that. But yeah, that I was gonna, since I was gonna be already down there, I was maybe gonna do a little side trip, but no. But you work with what you can.
Yeah.
Side trip from Canada to New York, and then a side trip to Arizona.
I mean, why not?
What's a front trip? What's a center trip?
Yeah. Actually, speaking of birds and photos, I amassed a little collection of photos of different birds and stuff that I've seen sort of in my local patch that I'd be happy to share.
That would be great.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
We'll try this screen sharing here and see if it works. All right.
Yeah, that looks great, Lev.
Can you see a Blackburnian warbler there?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, so this is just a couple of pictures I took. So this place that I've been birding, actually, this was the first place that I've ever donned binoculars in my life. Probably about 15 years ago. This is the first place I've ever been birding. It's close to where I grew up, and I sort of revisited it after 5 or 6 years of not going birding there. When I was a kid, I always thought, like, oh, this is the only place I can go birding, and it's probably, it probably sucks compared to all the other awesome places. But this year, especially, I found out that it's actually quite good. So on August 13th, I think it was, the first migratory birds showed up, the first fall migrants. This was one of them, the Blackburnian warbler, very common this year. Of course, this one here is in its fall costume, not spectacular orange throat like the males that you see in the spring, but they were the first. And Canada warbler was one of the ones that came next. A lot of these being seen this year as well. Not a budworm specialist, but probably benefits from budworm in one way or the next. I mean, they certainly live where the budworm lives and feed on caterpillars. So heightened sort of greater numbers of these were reported throughout Ontario this year, including by myself. This is big budworm specialist, and there have been really, really big numbers of them reported. This is Cape May warbler. You could see in the photo, there's a little, it's very small bill that's a little bit curved. And so this is one that feeds pretty heavily on nectar and the wintering grounds, which are mostly in the West Indies. So saw dozens and dozens sometimes per day, which is very cool to see. This is normally one on a poor year you don't see very many of, but abundant this year. Red Start, very popular one for obvious reasons. It's very colorful, black and orange, big flippy tail. This is one that breeds around my area, but there were a lot moving through in the fall as well. And one of my favorites, oven bird, named for the nest that it makes, that has kind of like a little roof over it, like a Dutch oven. Nests on the ground. And this is a nice one that it let me get pretty close to it. And this is quite a special one that's been colonizing Ontario over the past several years. Blue-winged warbler. Our standard warbler was golden winged, which is very similar, almost identical genetically, actually, to this species. This is the southern equivalent, and they've been sort of moving up into Ontario. And when I started birding in this little patch, they were unheard of here, but there were many, many, many that I saw over the course of several days. They are quite an attractive little bird. Cuckoos, again, this is one that we see in big numbers, sort of in late August. This is yellow-billed cuckoo moving through. They do breed here as well. And this is the other one that we see, black-billed cuckoo. This is young of the year. You can see it's got a little yellow eye ring there. The adults have a red one. And this bird is actually quite neat. This is a fairly nondescript little, but quite special. It's a yellow-bellied flycatcher. And this is a bird. So I've got about 12 years of records from this little patch that I've been birding. And over those 12 years, I've seen, I think, yellow-bellied 2 or 3 times. This is in both spring and fall, so in cumulatively. And this year, I think I had over 50. Over 50. And sometimes I'd see 5 or 6 in a day. So there was something happening with these ones. And it may be related to budworm, but it's interesting because the preliminary research that I did about this species indicates that budworm actually has a negative impact on them because it destroys spruce stands where these breed. So not sure what was happening with these, but there were a lot actually reported throughout the eastern seaboard as well. So yeah, interesting stuff. And these guys too, olive-sided flycatcher, big and fairly imposing looking. It has that quick 3 beers song that's quite classic. And again, when I was a kid, I would bird here every single day. I'd see 1 or 2 per year. This year I saw 5 in a single. This was 2 that were together that were fighting, and there were actually 3 in this tree. So they also had a good year apparently. Thrushes were moving through. This is a veery, a young of the year. Fairly standard numbers of them were going through, but always nice to see. Pretty secretive little birds. Vireos, I think these really stole the show this year. This is red-eyed vireo. This is a young of the year, so he doesn't have a very red eye, but there were days where I would see 30 or 40 in a day.
Wow.
Those were conservative estimates. So they, and it has been shown that they do better from budworm, and I'm really thinking that that's what these were, why these were so common. And Philadelphia vireo, this is another star of the year. So all over the eastern seaboard this year during the fall migration, in the Northeast anyway, they're reporting huge numbers. For me, in this place when I was a kid, you'd see 1 or 2, for a couple of weeks, maybe 1 or 2 per day. And this year it was unbelievable, the quantity of them. You'd see 10 or 11 birds in a day. And I had them from the middle of August to the 4th of October. It was a huge, long passage. And they got one in Galway in the other day, on the other side of the pond. So really something happening with these. And there is evidence that they do benefit from the budworm as well. So late season warblers, sort of as the season moved on. This is Wilson's warbler, nice little cap on there. Blackpoll warbler, another one that seems to be fairly common this year as well. Nice little yellow feet. A parula, northern parula, beautiful little warbler that they get sort of during the latter part of September. and bay-breasted warbler. Again, so this is one that's very well documented to depend on budworm, and it was evident. 30, 40 birds in a day was not uncommon during the peak of their passage, sort of in later September. And but my favorite warbler, and I think the most, probably one of my highlights for birding this year was this. This is Connecticut warbler. And we get this very infrequently in the fall in some places. In the fall, it's more common than in the spring. But when I was a kid in this place, I was looking for these like systematically every single day. You know, I would go in the brush, I would go to try and get things to come out. There'd be morning warblers that popped up, and I would try to turn them into Connecticut's, but it never materialized. And this year I saw two. One in late August, which didn't let me get any photos of it. But then this one in, I think it was September 11th or September 12th. And it just hopped out and just sat there, which was very satisfying to me. A long distance migrant that spends its year in South America, one of the longest distance migrants in our warblers. Orange crown, usually this is sort of the death knoll for the warbler migration here. If orange crown starts to appear, it's the end of the season. We still have a lot of them around. I saw quite a few yesterday. And palm warbler is another one that's a late one. We don't tend to see them until later on, into late September or October. And as you sort of transition into October, sparrows become fairly prominent. This one's probably my favorite. Lincoln sparrow. We have fox sparrows as well, named for that nice color of these red eastern birds. I took this 3 days ago, so lots of them are still around. And little winter wrens as well. Lots of them around, possibly benefiting from the budworm. We don't know. I think I've seen more than usual, but hard to say. Lots of flickers. This is northern flickers, or the yellow shafted form that we get here. Very common throughout the fall. They're all gone now, but a week ago they were still around. And even raptors. This is a really small area that doesn't attract lots of raptors, but this young peregrine, probably maybe a tundrius, it's very pale, one that maybe was born in the high Arctic. Saw it a few days ago. Hunting wood ducks over a swamp. And saw-whet owls. This is northern saw-whet owl, probably one of the cutest little birds that we have in Ontario. It's about the size of a pop can. And this is another one. This is an incredible year for them. In the spring, so it was my sort of last week probably around in Algonquin Park. And I found, well, it wasn't me. I wasn't found them. But there were 4 saw-whet owl nests that were found along Highway 60, the road that runs through Algonquin Park. Wow. And in my 10 years of living in the park, basically, I have not seen a single saw-whet owl nest. And I think I can count on my hand the amount of saw-whet owls I've seen kind of out. But 4 nests. And this year, I think almost every single station has already broken their saw-whet owl record for banding.
Wow!
And there's more coming. And I think, this is around the time that they peak. So there's maybe a little bit earlier. But yeah, people are getting like in their yards. People are banding like 30, 40 of them in a night. It's crazy. So I think it'll be a good year for them as well. So that's this is my last picture. I think it's kind of a fun picture. It's one of these pictures that we were talking about great blue herons earlier. I live in a very urban area. There's no green spaces in my little lot at all. The trees are maybe 10 years old at most. But really at this time of year when you're experiencing fall migration, you find birds anywhere. This bird was sitting on top of my house. It was a great blue heron. There's no water around for miles, basically. And one early morning when I was getting ready to go birding, it was just sitting there in my house. So very cool. And hopefully something that inspires folks to, get out and look for birds wherever they may be.
Holy cow, love. That's just amazing. I know we've talked about your photography before, but I think this might be the first time that people have really gotten to see kind of a showcase of your work, and it's just spectacular.
I like birds now.
That means a lot. I don't. It's not a profession of mine, but it is quite a hobby. So I do like to go out and get some shots when I can.
Yeah, those were incredible. Oh my gosh.
Thanks, Anthony. Yeah, I'm glad you liked them. Yeah.
I was told when I was teaching in Minnesota, they were like, "Oh man, the ovenbirds are the best. You got to check out the ovenbirds." And I never really put it together, but they were gorgeous. I really like those.
They are so cool. Yeah, they I actually had one in my yard for 3 days this fall. Which is basically like I've had a warbler in my yard I think once before. And for some reason this thing in this tiny, like, I don't know, it was like maybe 30 square feet of yard that I have, and it's got 3 individual trees in it that are, barely 10 feet high. And this thing just decided that it was going to hang out there. And I got to watch it kind of walk around, and they walk, they walk like a little chicken. They don't walk like other birds. So it's so cool, and yeah, they are really cool. Yeah, I like them a lot.
Very neat.
Wow. Well, I really appreciate both of you taking the time. It looks like Anthony's sun is about to go down, and
It's behind a tree right now, so it's a fake sunset.
fake sunset. But it was great talking with both of you, and yeah. So, have you got anything coming up that you want to share with us as far as speaking engagements, or anything you want to tell us about to be watching for next time? How about you, Lev? You got anything coming up?
Yeah, I actually do. So this weekend is the Global Birding Weekend, and it's also the October Big Day for eBird. It's an interesting event that I'm participating in with a lot of folks who work with me for Rock Jumper, which is the birding tour company that I work for. Basically what it is, it's just a big day. So you can go birding for 10 minutes. You can go birding for the whole day. It doesn't matter. It's this year it's supporting upping the cage bird trade in Southeast Asia. So
Awesome.
yeah, so it's awesome. Anybody can join Team Rock Jumper. You don't have to actually work for Rock Jumper or ever have been on a Rock Jumper tour. But you can join us. We have people from all over the world. We're all going to go birding on Saturday, put our species together, and we're hoping to raise some money to help BirdLife International curb this cage bird trade, which is a big problem for a lot of Asiatic bird species. For some species, it's actually the main problem that they're facing right now with their conservation, like a lot of starlings and stuff like that. So yeah, that's this weekend. And you can find out more info about that by going to the Global Birding Weekend website. I think it's globalbirding.org. Or you can go to rockjumperbirding.com if you want to join our team and learn a little bit more about us. All of those links are on my Facebook page as well, which is Lev Frid. I'm the only Lev Frid on Facebook. So if you want to learn more about that, yeah, please have a look at that. And it'd be nice to have folks join us from wherever it might be for a couple hours or the whole day.
Excellent.
Very neat.
That's great.
All right. Yeah, I have a quick reminder real quick. So I was just part of a USC panel. They were doing this kind of like food supply chain sustainability conference a couple days ago. It was on the 13th of October. And they were talking, there's a big subject of sustainability within corporate accountability. And they were really advocating like sustainability on the farmer level of different kinds of companies. I think it was like Chipotle, McCormick Spices, among other ones. I think Target had a representative there too. So any places that you dedicatingly shop to, there's a big shift in a paradigm of the customer. The internet gives the customer so much power. There's a lot of sway now that the customers can really influence the bigger picture. So if you have a dedicated place that you go to, this is a beautiful time to tell the people that are in the local areas about how much you can change, because things are changing, and to be on the right side of history because things are getting exciting.
So explain it to us. Like, what do you need people to tell their providers?
So there's a lot of it has to do with cutting out the middlemen and sustainability for farming. So that means that there's more. So say Chipotle has a farm in Chile, right? So instead of these Chilean farmers that sell to this middleman that end up selling to Chipotle, there's every time that you add an extra person into that chain, the accountability gets a little bit more diluted. So by taking out this middleman, by the larger companies investing exclusively into these small farming areas, what happens is they have these agronomists, they call them, but basically these ethicists, God, so many words, that come in and they make sure that things are above board. As before, there were just like these big exposés, like, oh, Nike's unsustainable, or oh, Qdoba has bad chicken meat. So instead of just these like random like splurges of articles that we get our information from, it's going to be more of an accountability trickling down from the top. So just any places that you really shop at, any kind of customer service thing that you can really talk to. I've talked to Cheez-Its probably 20 times about how they should get palm oil out of their products to help deforestation in Indonesia. Whatever you feel passionate about. I'm not trying to push anything on you, but it's whatever you feel passionate about. Things are changing, and you have a voice in it. So do what you can.
Man, that is a great message to end on. So let me say thank you both very much. And for all of you watching or listening today, come on back and see us next time on the Naturalist Podcast.
Thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks for joining us at the Naturalist Podcast. We are brought to you by Code5Design.net, a naturalist's first choice for t-shirts.
And Boreal Nature Tours, a nature tour company based out of Ontario.
If you are enjoying listening, please consider leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps get the word out and lets others know how to find us. We are on Twitter as The Naturalists, and our Facebook group is also The Naturalists, where you can ask questions about global natural history and interact with like-minded folks. What is going on outside of your front door? See you next time.